Bhagwan Sri Rajneeshee, easily the most controversial figure in Oregon.
Oregonians. It's a rare breed. I mean, that's the only thing I can say. It's a rare breed.
4 years of accusations climaxed this week with the arrest of the Bhagwan Sri Rajneeshee and 14 other Rajneeshees on charges that range from lying to immigration authorities to attempted murder.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sydney, and if you're new here, this is just a place where we can talk about true crime, spooky, scary stories, dark history, or anything else I got going on in my brain. So it's been a long time since we've talked about a cult story. I think the only one I've done is Sherry Shriner and her online cult, and that was well over a year ago, so I think we're overdue for a cult story. And today we are going to be talking about Bhagwan and the Rajneeshee cult. I tried to keep things within the scope of, what I could talk about in a video, but, if you like this topic, there is a really great documentary called Wild Wild Country that came out in 2018 on Netflix. Very good. I highly recommend it. I also used a 20-part series from the Oregonian about this topic. Really great resource if you want to look into it more, but let's stop yapping and let's start talking about the Rajneeshees. Also, as always, I'm filming with my cats and I am going to try to keep the light consistent, but they really like to mess around with my shades. So you might see some changing of the lights. Just know that my cats are having a really good time looking out the window. Okay, let's get into it. Chandra Mohan Jain was born in Kuchwada, India in 1931. From a very young age, his family said that he was extremely bright. He loved to read all the time, he did very well in school, but he also had a mischievous side. He was often called kind of like the ringleader of his friend group, always pushing them to new limits, getting them to try new things. That's just kind of the person he was. As he got older, he focused learning mysticism, philosophy, and spirituality. And Jain himself said that he actually reached enlightenment by the very young age of 22. He began speaking publicly while he was teaching at Jabalpur University. And then in 1964, investors started to put money into things like retreats and meditation groups, things like that, because they really believed in Jain. They saw what he was doing for people, and they wanted to put money behind that. And it was true that people that listened to Jain seemed to hang on to every word that he said. He had this kind of presence about him that made people just almost mesmerized with him.
Life begins at the point of your past life's death. And all these expressions that time is fleeting and passing and going are just a kind of consolation. It is really you who are passing.
And as I was bringing all of this information together, there are varying opinions on Jain and his speaking. Some people really believed that he was speaking from his heart, that he was really just a spiritual person, a spiritual being. But others, like some of his teachers and peers, said that he was just very good at manipulating people and that he almost had a way of hypnotizing people by the way that he spoke, by the way that he used his body language. And he was really good at it. Either way, people just kind of were drawn to him. Jain's beliefs followed the idea that the fast-paced life doesn't really work for everyone, and that spiritual and communal living is better. He believed that marriage wasn't useful and that life should be based on the concept of free love and loving who you want at any time. In fact, he believed in the idea of self-indulgence, the fact that having the finer things in life is not a bad thing and it doesn't really make you selfish. You should, if you can afford those things, enjoy them. And he showed this throughout his life. Probably the most famous thing that he bought was a fleet of 93 Rolls Royces at one point in his life. He was very, liberal in his thinking, although not everything lined up with that. It just a broad picture. And of course, I'm making broad strokes on things. He has many talks over many years, and he does contradict himself at some point. I'm just trying to kind of give you a basic idea of what Jane was teaching. These ideas and concepts that Jane was bringing up, he really was kind of an outlier, and people were drawn to that. People were used to ideas of self-discipline and avoiding self-indulgence, and this was just something that was completely new to them. There was also a new kind of meditation that Jane liked to use, and this was called dynamic meditation. So there are actually a couple different steps in dynamic meditation, or at least dynamic meditation in the way that Jane and his followers used it. So the first step is that participants were blindfolded and they listened to music and started breathing very heavily through their nose. And this was thought to summon the serpent force called Kundalini. Then participants were able to just let it go in whatever way that it meant for them. So some people would start screaming or crying or laying down on the floor or jumping around, whatever that was to them. The next step was to put their hands above their head and jump up and down and say, "Who?" Which just seems kind of silly to an outsider, but I guess that has some sort of meaning to it, right? And then the last step is just to sit or lay down in quiet reflection. It's also important to note around this time, he did change his name to Bhagwan Sri Rajneeshee. So I will be referring to him as either Bhagwan or Rajneeshee from here on out, just because that's how his followers and people that knew him referred to him. So Rajneeshee was growing his following more and more to a point where in 1974 he was able to build a commune in Pune, India called Sri Rajneeshee Ashram. And this allowed a space for people to gather, and he could reach more people this way. It was at this point, too, that they kind of became more of like a cemented group. And they all started wearing red. They wore necklaces called malas with a picture of Rajneeshee on it. They were like a little fan club. It was kind of cute. And they were known for their very liberal ways. And at this point, a lot of people were listening to him speak. Like 20 to 30,000 people would come and listen to him. And the majority actually were foreigners, either European or American descent, in their late 20s, early 30s, pretty well off. And this was kind of just the norm in Pune, India at the time. People were just like coming to Sri Rajneeshee Ashram to listen to the Bhagwan. At this time, he did get a business manager / personal secretary, and her name was Lakshmi. And she was his personal secretary from 1974 to about 1981, and she helped him with anything that he needed. And this was needed because at this time they were opening communes not only all over India, but in places like Italy, Amsterdam, Switzerland, Germany, Australia, Portugal, all over the frickin' world. And at this point, he had over 500,000 followers. So this man, he was really reaching everywhere. But behind the scenes, tensions were rising as Indian authorities were on Bhagwan because he was not paying his taxes. They were bringing in millions of dollars a year, and of course they had donations, but you still have to pay your taxes. So Indian authorities were, kind of getting on his ass about it. So Bhagwan actually tasked his personal secretary, Lakshmi, with finding a new place for the commune to start fresh. And that kind of gave the opportunity for Rajneeshee to get out of his tax situation. And now is a very good time to bring up a very important character in this whole story, and her name is Ma Anand Sheila. Sheila was only 16 years old when she and her family traveled to Bombay to listen to Bhagwan talk. And much like the other followers, she became infatuated with him, and she became a devout follower. By 1977, Sheila had become a business director, or at least one of them, for Rajneeshee's foundation, and then she quickly moved up to general manager. Then, just like that, in 1981, Sheila actually became the new personal secretary for Bhagwan, as Lakshmi was kind of failing her task of finding a new place for Bhagwan to relocate. And almost immediately after Sheila became the secretary, she was able to find a piece of land, a 64,000 acre piece of land in Antelope, Oregon, called Big Muddy Ranch. So Big Muddy Ranch was located just outside of Antelope, Oregon, and Antelope was a tiny, tiny, tiny little town. It only had about 40 residents, and they were mainly older, conservative, retired people, and they liked the quiet lifestyle. You know, they had gatherings like barbecues and picnics and Christmas parties, but they were a tight-knit community, but they also, you know, were private in the fact that they liked their quiet town the way it was. Reports said that from the very first day that Sheila stepped foot on Big Muddy Ranch, the people of Antelope, they were a little bit cautious. They weren't really sure about what was to come. On paper, this land was strictly for agricultural use. It was a ranch. It was supposed to be used for that. But, of course, Sheila and Rajneeshee, they wanted to build their little commune here. This was going to be their new place. So Sheila brought over a bunch of skilled workers, and they started to build this land from the ground up. And I think this part's really cool because everybody, men and women, they all worked day in and day out. It didn't matter the conditions, the weather. It wasn't like women, you go make the food while the men work. No. Women driving forklifts, digging in the fucking dirt. Hell yeah, right? And they really did make this land flourish, right? They put in houses, plumbing, electricity. Literally, they had a mall, a banking system. Like, this was a full-ass town that they built. They built separate little houses for Bhagwan and Sheila, and they took the infertile land and they made shit grow like nobody's business. They were almost completely self-sustainable, which is cool. Like, the concept of all of this is so cool. Like, just people working together. There's no, you know, inequality, none of that. Like, doesn't matter. We're all working towards a goal together. This is like the only praise I'm going to give them, but that is cool. And I think the most interesting part is that Bhagwan wasn't even there. He was in India still. They were just working together towards a common goal. And of course they had Sheila there, and Sheila was basically the right-hand man. And at the end, they had a pretty solid town. They had all of this infrastructure, but they also had things like a fire department. They had, like I said, a mall. They had public transportation, and they even had an airstrip. Like, they were set. But this was definitely needed because they were going to be housing like thousands of Rajneeshee followers. Like, they were going to need all of this stuff. And finally, Bhagwan did arrive in Oregon in August of 1981. And evidently, according to reports, he was kind of underwhelmed by his triple wide trailer that was built for him and things like that. Although down the line, they did, you know, put in trees, make it really green and nice for him. They even built on a swimming pool. But I guess at first he was kind of like, oh, I'm literally like your God, and you just gave me a triple wide trailer. However, Sheila in the documentary did say that Bhagwan was like super excited and super happy about his living arrangements. So I don't know, maybe he was fine with it all, but from what I read, he was kind of underwhelmed. As more and more followers traveled through Antelope to get into the commune, the residents of Antelope, they were getting a little bit nervous. Why are all these people wearing red? Why are they coming through our town? There are so many of them. What are we going to do? Soon a lawsuit was filed, and it was proposed that all of the buildings in the little commune be torn down because, you know, it's against what the land is supposed to be used for. So to combat this, the Rajneeshees actually started to buy up the land in Antelope because it was super inexpensive and they really wanted to prove their point. Like, if you won't let us expand on our land that we own, then we'll just come onto your land that you really want to keep nice and peaceful and quiet, and we'll just live in with you. We'll invade your little private quiet space, right? And this made the people of Antelope even more scared because they were like, these people are crazy and wild, and now they're starting to take over our town. But the people of Antelope were not going down without a fight. So in April of 1982, the city of Antelope had an election to disincorporate their town. And this was just to prevent them from being completely taken over by the Rajneeshees. Unfortunately, though, for the people of Antelope, there were too many Rajneeshee followers living there at this point, so the vote did not pass, and so the city of Antelope stayed just as it was, a city. And this created more tension. Like, it became very much like a wild, wild west situation. I don't agree with all of this, but the people of Antelope did what they could to show their displeasure with the Rajneeshees. They protested, they verbally threatened the Rajneeshees, and they began just shooting off their guns. Nobody was happy in this situation, but the Rajneeshees weren't going anywhere because it was their land. They were going to use it how they wanted to, and the people of Antelope could basically suck their dicks. The following month, in May of 1982, the Rajneeshees held a vote of their own to make the commune an official city, and they were going to name it Rajneeshpuram. And of course, the vote did pass 154-0. The commune was an official city now. Big Muddy Ranch was officially called Rajneeshpuram from this point. I don't really want to say that things mellowed out, but not a lot was going on. That is, until the early hours in July of 1983, when a Rajneeshee owned and operated hotel in Portland was bombed. This was seen as a direct attack on the Rajneesh people. And so, to combat this, the commune decided to protect themselves, arm themselves, and they began stockpiling firearms. It's reported that a few followers went all around the United States, going to different shops, getting guns that were untraceable, things like that. They had tear gas. They even tried to acquire automatic weapons at some point. They formed a security team and started training daily, just getting ready for any potential attack that might come their way. It was said that the citizens of Antelope could actually hear the security team doing their daily target practices, and that must have been very scary, just not knowing what to expect from this group of people. Believe it or not, there was actually another election in July of 1984, and this was to change Antelope's name to Rajneeshpuram. And the vote passed. So these poor people in Antelope had their town taken over, right? They changed the sign, they changed all the street signs, they hung up a flag. They also decided to take over city council. And so now there were 2 Rajneeshee followers and only 1 Antelope citizen on the city council. They were doing a full takeover. So all of this put Rajneeshpuram on the map, not just physically, but in the media as well. Like Rajneeshpuram was on every news station, and Sheila was the spokesperson. Bhagwan had actually taken a vow of silence in 1981, so Sheila did all of the talking for Bhagwan. She would meet with him once or twice a day and then bring all of the news to the followers.
We were a good team. He had the dream, the vision, and I had the ability to put it in practice from practical point.
So she also naturally spoke to the media. She did not hold back anything. She told the media and the press how she felt about every little thing.
So your godlike figure is quite happy to be a pimp.
And I beg your pardon.
I said your godlike figure is happy to be a pimp.
I beg your pardon. Whoever you happen to be. No, I'm not running for cover, mister. I don't run for cover. And person like you make me run for cover? Ah, that's a joke. Up yours, buddy. What can I say? Tough titties.
She would swear. She would flip people off. She would call the Oregonians stupid and uncultured.
Oregonians. It's a rare breed. I mean, that's the only thing I can say. It's a rare breed.
She just thought that people didn't understand them and that they were too beneath the Rajneeshees to understand the higher plan. And she saw this as not only her job, but as her service to her guru. Like, it just made sense. Like, when you look at it from that context, it definitely makes sense. But she was a little unhinged, right? And I love her for that. And because Bhagwan was silent during this time, it's very difficult to know if the takeover of Antelope, the acquiring of firearms, and the upcoming violence that we'll see, if it was Bhagwan's idea, Sheila's idea, or both. It was in the storm of all of these different battles that this story takes a very dark turn. I think it's important that we step back for a second and go back to our guy, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, right? Because he was still there at his commune, he was just having a vow of silence. So let's talk a little bit more about Rajneesh. So it's pretty well known that he had a lot of health issues. He had a nervous system disorder that caused him a lot of chronic pain, including back pain. He also had diabetes and a lot of allergies and bad colds and things like that. You know, he was in a lot of pain a lot of the time. I think it's also important that we just talk a little bit about Rajneeshee's stance on drugs. He did not allow drugs in Rajneeshpuram. He didn't think that drugs should be illegal. He thought that all drugs should be legal, but that they weren't really needed, especially if you were a happy person, you shouldn't need drugs. So he just didn't allow them in his commune because the people that were living in the commune were happy and they didn't need drugs. But that being said, around the time that Bhagwan was in Oregon, he started taking the highest dose of Valium. And this was prescribed to him, but obviously he started building up a tolerance to it, and this just kind of spiraled into abuse. So even though he was kind of against drugs, he just fell into addiction, which could literally happen to anyone. He also frequently used something called nitrous oxide or laughing gas. And I think all of this was just to ease some of that chronic pain that he had, because it was probably just so painful. I was reading about some of his health ailments, and I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy, right? Like, having chronic pain has to be so difficult. So, you know, it kind of makes sense that he was just falling into these things if it made him feel better. Nobody can blame him for that. But you have to imagine that his followers were kind of getting mixed messages, because it's said that once he got on drugs, he started to contradict himself more and things like that. So looking at this entire story and then realizing that the center of it was this man who was now on drugs and probably not having the most sound mind. He was giving orders to Sheila, he was giving orders to his other leaders, and this was probably creating a little bit of confusion and mixed messages. So I think it's just important that we keep all of that in mind as we move forward with the story. So it was the summer of 1984, and Rajneeshee followers were tasked with traveling around the United States looking for homeless people and asking them if they wanted to join the cause. There was a Greyhound bus that would take all of these people back to Oregon, to the commune, where they would get washed up, new clothes, medical and dental care if they needed it. They would get food, water, a place to live, and most importantly, they would get a genuine connection with other people.
It's nothing to do with the religion. It's just being yourself, and no stealing, you know, no violence whatsoever, no drugs.
What's your future? How long do you think you're going to be here? What are you going to be doing?
I'll be here forever, man. You know, I don't care if I'm shoveling dog dung, you know, it don't matter. I'll be here for as long as I can be here.
It seemed to be well-intentioned at first, but I think by this point, we know how the Rajneeshees are. The people of Antelope, though, they almost immediately knew something was up. Like, they did not trust these people anymore, and they saw this homeless population getting bigger and bigger, and they were like, this cannot be good for us. And unfortunately, they were right. Behind closed doors, the Rajneeshees were brewing this plan to take over 2 of the 3 seats on the Wasco County Circuit Court, and they needed more Rajneeshee votes. So bringing more Rajneeshees into the commune equals more votes. Hell yeah. After the homeless population was settled in Rajneeshpuram, a number of them went down to the local courthouse to register to vote, and they got turned away, because the people of Antelope were like, no, hell no. We know that this election's coming up and we know what you're doing, and no, leave. This made a lot of the homeless population mad, obviously, because they were like, you're denying my right as a US citizen to register to vote? Like, what the fuck? And there was one man that was extremely angry in particular, and Sheila was trying to calm him down. It wasn't working, and this man grabbed Sheila by the neck and was like holding her up by the neck. The police force that was formed by the city of Rajneeshpuram, they just kind of stood there like they didn't do anything. So Sheila was like, guys, can you fucking help me out? I'm literally being choked to death. And the police force was like, nah, girl, you got this. This tiny little woman being choked out by this man. People started to realize that bringing in a population of people that don't really have access to a lot of care and might have some untreated mental issues might not be the best idea. So instead of, you know, I don't know, like getting these people mental help or, you know, offering services or any normal thing, Sheila and the rest of the people decided that they were going to drug every single homeless person that was living in the commune. And they did this by putting sedatives in the nightly beers that they gave everyone. Then, to make things even worse, if that's even possible at this point, the security team started taking busloads of the homeless population and just dropping them off at random places in Wasco County. Sorry, we don't want you anymore. You're not useful to us. They just dropped them off.
They almost had me convinced. With their subtle love, their subtle, gifts. You come back to your bed and you got all these brand new clothes, laying on your bed, these gifts. If you're bummed out or something about something, they all hug you and give you all these loves and hugs, but it's all phony. It's phony,
And this is bad for so many reasons. Like, I'm sorry, you're just abandoning people that need your help randomly, right? After promising them all these things, giving them a taste of what their life could be, now you're just gonna drop them off like they don't even exist, like they're not real people. And just introducing a population of potentially dangerous people to random citizens of Wasco County. Like, really now? This whole part of the story makes me extremely mad. They started out kind of like, okay, right? Like, they're just following this dude because they like what he's saying. But now this dude is kind of giving them mixed messages. And so now they're just ruining an entire population of people because they can. Because they can. So with Operation Homeless Votes, I guess, failing, Sheila and Bhagwan actually had another plan brewing underneath the surface. An area just north of the commune in the Dalles, Oregon, they were dealing with their own problem. In September of 1984, they were dealing with a giant salmonella outbreak. 45 people were hospitalized and another 700 got extremely sick. Initially, it was thought that the restaurants in the area just had, contaminated food or something like that. But then investigators started digging a little bit. They later discovered that the Rajneeshees had their own little on-site lab where they had cultured and grown salmonella and made a special little device that they could fit in their sleeve and just spray salmonella over the salad bars in the Dalles, Oregon. Like, what the fuck? How do you even think of something like that? Who thought of something like that? And to make matters worse, this was supposedly like their test run of what they wanted to do on election day or like right before election day to keep people from voting in the Wasco County election. All of this was just to get 2 of the 3 seats on the Circuit County board. Are you kidding me? And this event was considered the nation's first successful bioterrorist attack by a cult. It's crazy. And this next thing is a rumor that was talked about in the documentary, but it's so fucking crazy that I just have to talk about it because it's been on my mind. It's been brewing and I hate it. So evidently the Rajneeshees tried to taint the water supply because Wasco County had an open water reservoir and a dam. They found out that beavers carry this certain bacteria that can make you really sick. So with this valuable information, the Rajneeshees took beavers and tried to introduce them to the water supply. But the opening that the beavers were supposed to fit into, like the beavers were too fat, so they couldn't fit the beaver in the water supply. So they ground up the beavers. They ground up the beavers and they poured the beaver smoothie into the water supply. And the reason that I don't think this is true, thankfully, is because you'd think that somebody would either get sick or notice that the water tastes funny or like something. But the fact that like that's all the information we have on it makes me think it's fake. Not the beaver smoothie, oh my God. This next attack though, I believe did happen. It was in the documentary and I just had to talk about it because it's so weird. But evidently the group sent everybody in the town of Antelope a box of chocolates. And they were like, oh, it's from this foundation that is based in Antelope. And it's just like a little thank you, like, thanks for supporting us, have some chocolate. But a couple people that ate the chocolates got like deadly sick, like super sick. And it was found out that in the box of chocolates, there was one chocolate that had a needle mark in it. And it was injected with something unknown that made people sick, which is so scary. Despite all of these plans to basically throw the election, it was held as planned on November 6th of 1984, and this election had a huge Wasco County local turnout. Like 93% of people that lived in the area voted, which, hell yeah. We love voting. During the election, the Rajneeshee people actually held protests, being like, how dare you not allow some of our commune members to register to vote? That's illegal, blah, blah, blah. They were super mad. Once all the votes were counted, Wasco County was going to remain in the hands of the Oregonians. And the Rajneeshees, you know, they kind of expected this, but they were not done fighting. And they had a couple more tricks up their sleeve. On the night of January 14th of 1985, the Wasco County Planning Building was set on fire. Evidently, there was a lot of incriminating evidence in this planning building against the Rajneeshees. And it was also leaked around this time that the cult was planning on assassinating one of the reporters that was just trying to keep up with the entire Rajneesh Purim situation. Not a great look for Bhagwan and his followers. At this point, a hotline was put into place just to collect any tips or like any, you know, like concerned citizens, anything that they had to say. And one person did call in and said that Sheila was planning on bombing the Wasco County Courthouse. So there was a lot going on. You know, tensions were still high, even though Wasco County had won. The Rajneeshees were not going down easy. Then kind of suddenly in September of 1985, Sheila just left the commune. And from an outsider's perspective, it was a little bit confusing, I think, and probably for most of the followers too. She actually, in her interview for Wild Wild Country, said that she had just kind of had enough. Like, Bhagwan was kind of going crazy with the drugs and, you know, kind of toying with her, and she had finally had enough. Like, she was sick of being the spokesperson. She was sick of being in all of these tensions. She was just done. She was done with it. So she decided to leave and go to West Germany, and a couple of people actually followed her there, her friends. She kind of tried to start a new life, start over. Sheila leaving made Bhagwan mad, like super mad, to the point that he broke his 4-year vow of silence. Yeah, this woman made him, ooh, he was so mad. And so he spilled the beans about everything, and he blamed everything on Sheila.
She's drugged. She's on hard drugs. She did not prove to be a woman. She proved to be a perfect bitch. Out of the very burden of all the crimes that she has done, or she will have to suffer her whole life in imprisonment. I needed a parrot who knows nothing of philosophy, knows nothing of religion, knows nothing of the ultimate problems of life. Sheila was perfect.
He was like, it wasn't me. Sheila is crazy and controlling and blah, blah, blah. And of course, his followers believed him because they loved Bhagwan. And they were like, oh my God, Sheila is this horrible person and she betrayed us and I can't believe she would do this to us. But Sheila was really just trying to start over and like get out of this place, because I think she had finally come to her senses, like, I don't really want to be doing this. And Bhagwan didn't just say all this to his followers. He said it to the press. He said it to the media. He would talk to anybody that would listen, saying like, Sheila, she's the bad guy. I'm fine. She's the bad guy. Because now the entire world knew about this situation. The FBI got involved. The tobacco firearm guys, I don't remember their official name, but they got involved. State and local police got involved. Everybody got involved, and they started heavily investigating every Rajneeshee involved. The Rajneeshees were compliant for a little while, but then they started to get kind of nervous that they were going to get prosecuted for being innocent followers, basically.
This woman came up, was standing at the phone, and she was crying, and I said, are you okay? I knew she was with the medical corporation. She says, I have always heard about FBI interrogations, but I feel like I've just been raped. And I said, well, what's the matter? You know, what happened? And she said, they were not straight with her. They were really not just interrogating her, but intimidating her and harassing her and asking her to say things that didn't have anything to do with the case, and really making her feel like a criminal. She said, I am innocent, and I walked out of there feeling like I was a criminal myself.
It's true that most of them really didn't do anything wrong. They were peaceful and just trying to live on their commune with each other. So at this point, the FBI, police, investigators, they just got search warrants and they planned a raid on the commune. And for this raid, authorities had to plan and brace themselves for the worst because they knew that the Rajneeshees had an arsenal of weapons. And so they planned everything out, but Bhagwan actually escaped the commune before the raid happened. The Bhagwan hopped on a plane trying to escape authorities, but they were faster, and they quickly surveyed the area and tried to find out where the plane would have to refuel. And they determined that that would be in North Carolina. They were able to beat Bhagwan to the airport, where they did arrest him. At the same time in Germany, Sheila's house was raided, and she and 2 other followers were arrested. And this was for something that I didn't really talk about, but it was for the attempted murder of Bhagwan's doctor. Basically, Sheila was like mad at the doctor, and so she hired 2 of her followers to try and like poison him. I didn't really talk about it because it was kind of just a side arc. There was so much stuff to talk about in this case that we could have talked about this case forever. So anyway, just know that she and 2 other followers did get arrested. So back in the United States, once Bhagwan was arrested, Bhagwan was taken back to Oregon, but they made him stop at many different prisons along the way. And by the time he got back to Oregon, he was just so tired and so run down that he just pleaded guilty to his crimes. He was charged with immigration fraud, and before he was sent back to India, he had to pay a $400,000 fine. He was sent back to India that same night, and he traveled back to Pune, India, back to his commune, where he taught and lived for the rest of his life. And at this point, he also changed his name to Osho. So a lot of times people will talk about him and refer to him as Osho. He had many different names throughout his life, but Rajneesh was his bad bitch era. After Sheila served her sentence for her crimes, she returned back to Germany, and she actually runs 2 nursing homes to this day, which is kind of cute. I have mixed feelings about Sheila because you can see so many different sides of her. Like, she was really a manipulative bitch when she was working for Rajneesh. Like, she was ruthless. She did not care about the people of Antelope. She did not care about anybody that wasn't a Rajneeshee follower. She also had a sweet side. Like, when they were interviewing her in this documentary I watched, like, she seemed like a genuinely good person. She wasn't apologetic for the way that she was. The Rajneesh community continues to thrive to this day. There are communes all over the world in 80 different countries. They still do their meditation and their retreats, and like I said, there's channels with him talking about stuff, there are books and blah 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 blah. There's a lot of different things. A lot of people really like the things that he's taught, and a lot of his teachings, I watched some of them. I watched some of his talks. You know, they're good. There's some good life lessons in there. I think that we can learn a little something from everyone. I maybe wouldn't follow everything the man says, but there's some few good gems in there. So that is the very complicated, convoluted, crazy story of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, the Rajneeshee cult. I really hope that this made sense. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking around. I appreciate you. Leave in the comments below anything. Did you like this story? Did you hate it? Do you want more cult stories or less cult stories? I haven't done like a true blue true crime case in a while, actually. I've been a little under the weather. So talking about a lot of murder just isn't the vibe right now, but maybe I should just get back to it, you know? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling next week. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a beautiful, lovely day and keep being the bad bitches that you are. Goodbye, guys.